it's so important, you know. I mean, that's it basically, because that's what the scriptures tell us. You know, if you can just, I mean, it seems like one lie, you always can start to bury it with something else, you know. And it'll become a lifestyle with if you do it, you know. It'll affect your whole life.
Jake, we're nearing the end of our interview. The next part is about advice you have for the future generations of your family. First, what advice do you have for your great-grandchildren in the area of getting an education?
Well, education really, it seems to be a lot more important today than when I was young. I mean, you could get by on a grade school education, and you could command yourself to get a good job by self-training and experience. But today, you know, I think it's with the technical aspects of the world, computerized things and things like that, we do need special training. And I was, like I said, never was able to save money we weren't able to send none of our children to college. Our first son, we sent him to college, you know, and he got a loan, and he only went for a year, and we had intentions of doing that, but we obviously saw after trying that, he was the only one that's going to get a year in school. And now Danny, we're trying to help him through school, because it's so important now to get an education, and I hope my children, and I think they do, they recognize setting aside some kind of money or some kind of program that when their children grow up, that they will be able to at least send them to junior college to get them started, you know, and usually they can get an education on their own if they really have the motivation to recognize how important it is to choose some kind of vocation that you like, and that's what I hope they all can do, you know. And some are going through kind of a loose period now where they're just floating, they don't know what they want to do, and I guess maybe they have to go through it. I guess I went through it, and we all do, but I hope they recognize sooner or later they have to do something if they want to get a successful education and job and lifestyle.
What advice do you have for them about money?
Well, I don't think I handle money very well, like I shared with you. You know, whenever we got any extra money, we just invested into our lifestyle, you know, some way, or have an extra week vacation, or get a better car, or something. And I would hope that they would take that money and probably invest it some way for the future for their grandchildren, you know, so they wouldn't fall into a trap, or when they come to a time where they're dealing with a situation and they have grandchildren and want to help them, that they are quite hopeless to do it financially like I am, you know, and we'll be able to do something for them.
What about love and marriage?
Well, of course, I'm deeply involved in that myself, and I pray that for all of my children, and or anybody really. Love and marriage, you can see what's happened in this world today. When marriages are broken down, it's affecting the whole country. I mean, the morals of this country are deteriorating so much, and I trace that back right to our morals. Marriages don't mean nothing anymore, and I would hope that my children would look at marriage as a lifetime event, you know, and there's going to be things in your marriage, or you aren't going to be that happy with your spouse or something, you know. Like you shared with me, am I getting fat? Well, do you want me to keep up with you? You know, but I mean, marriage has got to be a lot richer and deeper than that, you know, physical stuff, you know. It's something you do for life, and I think you should go into it with that, well, at least with that goal, you know. I'm sure some things happen. I think you can have victory over almost any event in your life if you can look and work at it and try it, you know. I mean, I've had the Lord to help me with my situations, and so I've had it a lot easier. But people who don't, or even my children, if they don't trust the Lord to deal with these problems, the first thing they do is they get divorced to solve the problem or anything, you know. And I just hope that they would know the Lord, or even if they don't, to at least salvage the marriage through some way, because I'm sure they are going to come to know the Lord, because that's my prayer.
how should they raise their children?
Well, just to deal with what I said, I see so many families where they spend weekends with the father, weekends with the mother, and I just feel, I feel so tragic for these people. I know some of them personally, and they love the child so much, and then they only have him for 2 weeks. And I said, it just befuddled me how somebody would put themselves into a position like that where they were going to be separated from their children, and that's why I say it's so important to save the marriage, because the children, when they grow up like that, it's devastating in split homes, and it's so easy to go astray, because you got the two personalities giving instructions, and there's no unity.
Jake, probably all the generations of your family will watch this tape. Since you have the opportunity right now, what personal message would you like to give them?
Well, obviously, they know what's coming, and the only thing I can say is your spiritual life is the most important thing. Even is to accept Christ as your Savior. At least, read the Bible, and you see very, very rare do you see an unsuccessful Christian. They fight through their problems with victory. And for any of who might be watching this, that would be my prayer, that they would ground their life in the Bible and in the author, Jesus Christ.
Jake, we're at the end of our interview right now. Is there anything you'd like to add or say to complete things? Please take as much time as you'd like.
Well, I'm in a dilemma. It seemed like I've said all I would want to say. I mean, I know I could talk on with testimonies and everything else, but I hope this has been a testimony, because that's my one goal in life, at least for myself and my wife and our children, is that they all know Jesus Christ, their personal Savior, and that we're going to spend eternity together, because God promised that we're all going to live eternally, and we have a choice of where we're going to live. It's either with the Lord in heaven, or if we choose not to, we're going to spend it in eternity in hell. And I'd hate to think of anyone I love so much to go to hell. And it breaks my heart to think that someone I love would spend eternity there.
Jake, we really want to thank you for allowing us to do this grandparents interview with you today. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Jake, it's good to be back with you today and do an addition to your interview here. I understand that you have a few things that you'd still like to relate to us. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about them?
Okay, well, I've written to my children and trying to get some grandchildren's pictures, to put at the end of my tape, and I just received them in the mail yesterday, so I could continue this tape, and I didn't want to leave any of them out. I know there'll probably be more to come, I can't do nothing about that. But, and then there's been a lot of people in my life who have meant so much, dear friends and other family members I'm dedicating this last portion to. They have been important in our walk with Christ and in helping us grow. And so I'm going to sing a little song here. It's been a very favorite of mine, and I've written a couple extra verses to it, and I'm dedicating this to these dear friends and my grandchildren. So, and then at the end of this grandchildren's and our friends' presentation, Rose would like to say a few words to our friends and grandchildren.
Hi, Rosie. Today is August 15th, 1994, and we're going to have a bit of an interview with yourself. It's good to have you here today.
Thank you.
Rosie, what is your full name?
Rose Lena Romandini Jacobson.
Is there anything special or unusual about your name or the way you were named?
Well, I was named after both of my grandmothers. My father's mother's name was Rose and my mother's was Lena.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Chicago Heights, Illinois on January 12, 1935.
So that makes you 59 years old right now?
Yep.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and then I also have a half-sister.
What are their names?
Okay, my brother Joey, and then I have a brother Victor, and a sister Patty, and a sister Martha, and then my half-sister's name is Elsie.
And what are their ages in relation to yours?
Okay, my brother Joey is 54, and my brother Victor is 52, and my sister Patty is 49, and my sister Martha is 47, and my half-sister Elsie is 70.
What are your parents' names, and when and where were they born?
My mother's name was Martha, and my father's name was Joseph, and my father was born in Italy, and my mother was born in Illinois.
Are they still living?
No, they're both deceased.
What were your parents' occupations?
My dad was a factory worker, and my mom was a homemaker.
Did you know your grandparents?
I just knew my grandmother on my mother's side.
Can you tell us anything about her? What was her name?
Her name was Lena.
Uh-huh.
Not really. I was quite young. I don't remember too much about her. I know they had a big family and they lived on a farm in southern Illinois.
Rosie, where did you go to elementary school, and about what year did you start?
I started at first grade, and I went to a Catholic school in Chicago Heights, Illinois. I don't remember the name of it, though.
While you were growing up, did you have any sense of whether your family was rich or poor? And looking back now, what would you say about your family's economic circumstance at that time?
I don't think we were poor. I mean, we weren't rich. I mean, we were, we had enough. We had enough food, and we always had clothes and everything like that. My dad worked hard. My mother didn't work because she had a bad heart, so she couldn't. But we were well taken care of, so I never, I would say we were more of the middle class.
Let's take a little jump here to your high school years. Where and in what year did you go to high school?
Okay, I was in an orphanage at that time, and that was in Chicago. It's Angel Guardian Orphanage, and that's where I went to high school.
And that's where you lived during that period of time?
Yes, my mother died when I was 12, and then I was put in an orphanage, so that was in 8th grade, and then I did my high school years in the orphanage.
Do you have any memories that stick in your mind from that particular time you were living there?
Yeah, a lot of them. Some are good and some are not so good. We had, in our high school years, you went to school for a half a day, and then you worked a half a day, like either in the laundry or in the kitchen or in the nursery. And then when you got done in the evening, you went to your respective cottage, and you had your little chores that you had to do there, whatever, and had time for relaxation or fun playing games with with the other girls in the cottage.
Did you have any favorite sports when you were in school, and were you on any teams?
Yeah, my favorite sport was basketball, and we did have a basketball team there at the orphanage. What they did is some of the different high schools there in Chicago, with Catholic schools, they would have the girls come over and we would play games against them. And yeah, I was on a team, and I remember real vividly on one of our basketball games that I got knocked down, and when I went to get up, one of the girls from the other team hit me in the knee, and I had a fractured knee, and I've had trouble with this knee ever since. It's given me a lot of problems. Well,
That's quite a memory. If you could have changed one thing about those high school years, what do you think that would have been?
well, I would like to, now seeing what kids do in high school, I would have wished that I could have just went to a regular, normal high school. I'm sure a lot of things would have been different, because at the high school there in the orphanage, there was a lot of things that we didn't get to do because it wasn't available.
Let's take another jump to your adult life here. Where have you lived during your adult life now?
Well, we lived in Skokie, Illinois for about 2 or 3 years, and then we moved to Wildwood, Illinois, and we lived there for 22 years while we raised our family. And then we moved down here to Florida in 1977. So that's where we lived.
Where did you live between the time you left school and the time you got married?
Oh, I lived with my half-sister in Chicago, Illinois. When I left the orphanage and graduated from high school, I lived there for a little over a year.
What was the first job you had after you left home?
I worked for a jewelry store. The name of it was Bush's Jewelry Store there in Chicago.
What did you enjoy about this?
I just liked the job. I mean, it was office work. Not only did we sell some of the jewelry, but I did mostly their typing and their filing and stuff like that. To me, it was just a real thrill because of being in an orphanage, and we didn't have a lot of things. So just being out and being able to be with the other people was a real joy for me.
Rosie, what is your husband's full name?
Reginald John Jacobson.
Where, when, and how did you meet?
Well, I met him through a fellow worker that I worked with at the jewelry store. Her fiancé at the time and Jake were going to Naval Reserve together, and she decided that I should be going out with some fellas, and so she said, I know a real nice guy that's a friend of my fiancé, and I think we ought to get you two together. So they set up a blind date for us, and that's how we met.
What was that first date like?
It was interesting. I mean, that was probably my really first date. I had gone out with a couple of the boys that I graduated with from the orphanage, but that was my first real date. We went to the Moose Club, and we had dinner and dancing, and I was scared to death.
What was your courtship with Jake like?
It was we had a real nice courtship. I mean, we had our ups and downs. Sometimes one time I remember he got mad at me for something. I don't remember what it was, but I had given him my graduation picture, and he had it in the back seat of the car. He was going to give it back to me, and it was going to call it quits. But then he said that night I was really real sweet to him, and he thought, oh, well, I'll give her another chance. But, we went together for about a year before we got married.
What would you say is the most important thing about choosing a husband?
Well, you have to have, first you have to have love, and then you have to have trust, and you have to be able to get along with each other. You have to be compatible in a lot of things. And I would say now your most important is that you both love and Jesus Christ as your Savior. At the time when Jake and I were going together, neither one of us were saved. But what I know now, I would say it's a very important thing.
In what ways has marriage turned out to be different than you thought it might have been?
Well, it's not a bed of roses, and it's not all fun and joy like a lot of times people print it out to be, but it has its ups and its downs. But if you work together, you can work your problems out together, and if you talk it out, and you can work it out. And then main thing is if you have the love of Christ in your heart and you have Him as the center, He can see you through any problem.
When were your children born, and what are their names?
Okay, our oldest son John was born in Illinois, and he was born on April 5th, 1954. And then our daughter Sherry was born on June 16, 1955. And then our daughter Lynn was born on August 28, 1956. And then Chuck, our son, was born on March 6, 1958. And then our daughter Chrissy was born on November 6, 1959. And then there's a 10-year span, and then Jennifer was born on May 3rd, 1970, and Danny was born on August 24th, 1973.
Let's go back to the first one. I'd like you to think back to the day your first child was born. What was that experience like for you?
It was really exciting. I mean, I was really happy that I was going to be a mother, and I didn't have a very long labor, and I just was really thrilled that I was able to have our first child.
What are some special memories you have of raising your children?
We have a lot of them. We had a good time together. We did everything together as a family. That was one of the things, being brought up in the orphanage. I had missed out on a lot of things when I was growing up to do with the family, so I was make sure that I was a part of my family. We did a lot of things together. We played games, we went on vacations. I mean, we'd go outside and have snowball fights with the kids, and I remember sometimes the neighbor kids would come over and they'd play, and one time when some of them came over and knocked on the door, and I said, well, the kids aren't home. They said, well, that's okay, you can come out and play with us. So they knew that we spent a lot of time with our family, so we just had a real good time together. I grew up with them.
What is the best thing about children, and what's the most frustrating?
The best, it's just if they obey and tell you the truth, and I think those are real important factors, and you can go through a lot of the other things. Frustrating to me is when they don't mind and they try to do things that they know they're not supposed to, and they get rebellious. That's very frustrating because they know better and it's not how they were brought up. That irritates me.
Now, what is it like to be a grandparent?
Oh, I love being a grandparent. We have 16 grandchildren. We don't get to see all of them as often as we'd like, but when we do, we have a real good time together. I do the same thing with them as I would have with my own children. They have to mind, and we just play and do things together. Sometimes they maybe just go to the park or go to the beach when they're around, but we just really enjoy them.
Now, Rosie, I'd like to switch to a different area, the subject of your interest. What do you enjoy? Do you enjoy to travel? Yeah. Do you enjoy travel?
Yes, I like to travel. I don't get to do it too much. I only get 2 weeks vacation because I'm working, but yeah, I'd like to see a lot more of the United States. I haven't seen all of them, all the states. I've been in some, and I would like to go over to Italy, I think, just because that's where my dad was from, and see what it's like over there.
What are your interests and hobbies, and what do you like to do for fun?
Well, my interests, I do a lot of church work, and I love it. I like to work with kids, and we always have. When our older kids were growing up, we were quite involved in church activity, Awana, Boys Brigade, basketball teams for the boys, and we had young people, high school, and they had activities every Saturday night, and we were quite involved in that. I can remember we used to make pizza for 125 teenagers, and so we really enjoyed always working with kids, and I like to do craft work like sewing and crocheting and different things like that. Those are some of my things that I like to do.
What's the most important thing in your life right now?
The most important thing in my life is, first is my love for my Savior, and then it's my family. I feel that they need me and I need them, and I just feel that I need to, that I'm there for them if they have any problems. And then my husband, we like to do a lot of things together, and now that we're getting on in years, we're going to be taking a few trips together.
What is the most important thing you've learned about life thus far?
Most important thing that I know about life is that in order to be able to get through life, you have to have someone that you can depend on, and I know that my having Christ in my heart has really helped me. I know we've had a lot of heartaches and problems, but we're able to go through them because we have Christ in our life, and He is there to help us with any problem that we need. I mean, things don't always turn out the way we want them, but He is there to help us, and I don't know how anybody these days now can go through life without having Christ to lean on.
Well, then you obviously believe that it's a very important thing to have religion in your life then, right?
Yes, I sure do.
That you've expressed. Thank you. Rosie, we're nearing the end of our interview. The next part is about advice you have for the future generations of your family. First, what advice do you have for your great-grandchildren in the area of getting an education?
Well, I think it's really important that they get an education, not only up to high school, but nowadays you have to have a college education in order to get anywhere. Stephanie. And if not a college education, at least like maybe go to a vocational school or some kind of other trade that you have something to fall back on, because it's so hard nowadays for people and families to get along with just a high school education.
Well, let's see if we can get Stephanie to sing just a little bit in a minute here. Hold on just a second. Okay, we're back again. What advice do you have about money?
Well, I think you should work hard, and you should save some. Now, we lived from hand to mouth. We didn't have a lot of money to save,